Should anyone be investing in 90% silver today? My name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel, and this is the very question that I have been asking myself in recent days, probably for the first time since I started investing in 90% silver. Now, I've made my first silver investment in 1981, but it wasn't until the year 2001 when I started getting on eBay and buying 90% silver that I really got into that segment of the silver market. And I really enjoy that particular sector because I really have enjoyed collecting coins through the years. And so back in 2001, I was able to really start doing that in earnest because a lot of the 90% silver you come across is quite collectible, whether we're talking about silver half dollars, quarters, and dimes, or whether we're talking about silver dollars. There's a definite collectible factor to that, and there's a rarity factor in certain dates and mint marks and conditions of these coins. And so for those of you who are like me who enjoy collecting coins, you'll understand 90% is an area of the market that has so many possibilities. Just the fact that it's good for a barter situation. You can go down as low as 0.07 ounces of silver in dimes, and so it's got a divisibility factor that makes it very easy to transact business. And of course, this was the intention of our founding fathers because they started our coinage as being either silver or gold. As a matter of fact, that was the only constitutional money that was available, and that's why it's called constitutional silver at times. Today is December the 15th of 2025. Silver was actually selling for over $64 an ounce. It's quite close to its all-time record high. But as silver has gone up on the different exchanges around the world, the price of 90% has gone down. And when I say the price of 90% going down, I really am referring to the price that we can get when we sell it back to dealers, typically. And so this is becoming more and more of a problem, and it's really started to show itself in the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, on December the 1st, there was a major online dealer that was advertising the purchasing of 90% silver for just $3.75 below spot price. That was the best price that I saw a week ago. That same online dealer was then buying it for $8.10 below spot. And then today I checked, and that same dealer is now buying it from their customers for about $10.30 below spot, or about 16% below the spot of silver. Well, that's an incredible discount when you think about it, and especially when you think it's gone from $3.75 below spot to $10.30 below spot in just a 2-week period. Well, that's about as significant a move as I have ever seen within the market. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, silver was selling for a little over $57 an ounce, and today it's selling for a little over $64, and yet you cannot sell your 90% for any more today than you could 2 weeks ago when silver was $7 lower, at least not to this same dealer. This particular one advertises as having the lowest prices, period, so you can probably figure out who they are. But today they're offering $10.29 below spot to purchase silver, but they're selling it for 49 cents an ounce over spot. That's 1%, just a little under 1% over spot for the sell price. And so there's nearly a 17% difference in their spread between what they'll buy it for and what they'll sell it to you. There's another very prominent dealer online today that is advertising that they will buy your 90% silver back at $13.30 below spot. But they will sell it to you for about $1.70 over spot. And so they're buying it back at 21% less than spot value, but they're selling it for about 2.5% over spot. So they've got a 23.5% spread. I've never seen anything like this. Buying and selling silver fairly actively for at least 25 years in the 90% category, and I've never seen anything like this. Certainly, when the market went up in 2011, the spread started to widen considerably, but nothing like this. This is unprecedented as far as my knowledge, and so it has caused me to ask the question, is it even worth it to buy 90% silver? Now, the third dealer is much better. I've mentioned this particular dealer before. Today, he was offering buying silver at $7 below spot, which is 11% below spot, but he's willing to sell it to his customers for $5 below spot, or just 8% below spot. And so he's only got a 3% spread. So these dealers have respectively a 17% spread on their buy-sell, another 23.5% different on their buy-sell, and then the last one just a 3% difference. And of course, you know who I would be buying from if I was buying from a dealer right now. But here is the point that I want to make. Silver is doing better than it ever has before on a nominal price. But 90%, because of the fact that the refiners really don't want to mess with it right now, has really come down. And some of these large dealers just don't believe they can take the risk. And so they have put their spreads on what they'll buy and sell at nearly 20%, some of them over 20%. I would avoid these dealers like the plague right now. Now, as they start to tighten up their margin, these are some pretty good dealers. I've dealt with both of these, the one that's buying for 16% below and the one that's buying for 21% below spot. I've certainly dealt with them in the past. I have bought and sold from both of them. But again, right now, the margins are way out of line with what they've been historically. And one of the things that silver traders need to really keep in mind is that you need to be fairly nimble. What made sense 2 weeks ago when a big dealer was paying $3.75 below spot, well, that was pretty good, and it made sense to be buying and selling within that, especially when you had another dealer who was selling at about 8% under spot at the time. Right there, you had a pretty good margin. You could actually do some arbitrage at that point, but that only lasted for a few days, and now we're back to this point where there's a big spread. The only one that I found that wasn't was the coin shop in Florida. I've got a coin shop in Amarillo as well. I haven't contacted them on their 90% prices, although I have sold back some sovereigns and some .999 generic rounds recently, and their spreads are much better on that. They pay a very fair price. And so there are some dealers, some local coin shops that I believe are doing much better than the big boys are doing right now. And there's two reasons for that. One is they've got tremendous overhead. You'll see some of these big dealers advertising to try and get you to buy and sell from them. So their overhead is indeed higher, and they have to make up for that. But there's also a greater risk because they buy so much and they sell so much. When that gets out of balance and they get an inventory that they cannot sell to the wholesalers or to the refineries, well, then they've got a problem. And so essentially what they're telling you is they don't want to buy your silver. They will buy it for a ridiculous price, and in that case, they'd be more than happy to, but they're not interested in your 90% silver right now. And since that's the case, I wouldn't even contact them. I wouldn't buy from them either, as long as they've got this large of a spread until they get their business model straightened out. So the answer, should you be buying 90% silver, my first comment is probably not from the big dealers right now because their margins are just too out of whack. They have some legitimate reasons for that, but it is so ridiculous right now, I wouldn't even patronize them until they get their business models under control, at least not in the 90%. Now, as far as buying 90% at all, I have been. As a matter of fact, I've bought 90% as recently as just a couple of days ago, but I've bought it off of eBay, and I've been buying off of eBay for quite a number of years, and then I'll just sell it to my local coin shop if I want to get rid of some. Typically, you really have to search for a good bargain. I go to the Buy It Now on US silver coins, and I just look and see what's the most recent offerings. And every once in a while, I'll find a pretty good deal on that. Sometimes I won't find a good deal for weeks on end, but some days I'll purchase 2 or 3 pretty good orders. And because of that, I continue to go back to eBay and look to see what they have. They do have some problems, certainly, when you get to 999 with counterfeiting, and even their rare coins, sometimes you'll get a counterfeit coin from time to time. They're notorious in their silver dollars for having counterfeit, but they're very good at making it right. So if you should get something that's not genuine, all you have to do is contact them. At least this is what I have done through the years, and they've always taken care of it almost without exception. And so I have that confidence going into it. Have I gotten counterfeit coins off of eBay? Absolutely, but I've always been able to send them back. And so that's something to keep in mind. But again, here is one platform that every once in a while you can find a pretty good deal. And here is my recommendation to you. If you are buying 90% silver right now, I certainly wouldn't buy it for anywhere near spot. As a matter of fact, I would pretty much only buy it if I could find it for 15% below spot. Well, where can you find that right now? And again, you're not going to find that through your coin shops or your dealers. They have to keep their lights on. But like I say, every once in a while you'll find a good deal on eBay, just on a Buy It Now. And if you're used to that particular platform, you understand what I'm talking about. There are some good deals to be had. And by the way, if you don't believe that, just go to the Buy It Now section of US silver coins and then scroll down on the left bar until you get to the sold items and hit that, and you can see what they've been selling coins for. And every once in a while you'll see a great bargain that you'll think, man, I wish I'd have gotten that. So they do pop up from time to time. It's something that's interesting to me because it's just part of the hobby that I've had, but it's also turned out to be a pretty good investment over time. As I say, you have to do some looking on it, and you may not find it very quickly, if at all, but if you are able to, then yeah, I would indeed invest in 90%. The other way I would invest in it would be if I was just wanting to accumulate some right now and price was not the utmost consideration. And if that was the case, then I would again go to some of these local coin dealers. I mentioned one a couple of weeks ago, Vermilion. They're the ones that's selling it at $5 below spot as of today, but they're buying it back at $7 below spot. So a 3% spread's very reasonable. In my opinion, this is a dealer that is very much worth patronizing. I've got one in Amarillo, Stout Safe Storage. I'm not sure what their buy-sell spread is on 90% because I just haven't checked lately and I haven't seen it online, but you can go online and check that, and it should give you a fairly decent idea. But again, I would do my best to try and make sure that if I was buying 90%, I would find the best bargain available if I just had to have it. And right now, you can get it for $5 below spot. And so I would do something like that way before I would go and pay a spot plus a premium that the really big dealers are selling right now. One other thought. Anybody who has dealt in silver for any length of time knows that the different sectors, whether we're talking about 90% half dollars, quarters, and dimes, or the 90% silver dollars, or whether we're talking about the 999 fine bars and rounds, or the 999 fine sovereigns, they all have different periods of time where one will outdo the other, or typically you'll see one selling at a much better premium than some of the other sector. And so this is something to keep an eye on. But the thing that I've noticed through the years is when one part of the market gets a little bit askew, when it gets too far away from the other part of the market, like 999 fine is right now as compared to 90%, that gap typically closes, and sometimes they swap ends. It's just been less than 3 years that you could actually sell 90% silver to a dealer for over $8 an ounce over spot. And so these things fluctuate, certainly. When the prices go up on the spot, usually the spread starts to go down against you And so you need to keep that in mind. But again, would I stop dealing in 90% altogether? And the answer is no. But I will say this, I'm buying an awful lot less right now. And when I buy it at considerably below spot. And that is hard to find. You have to do a little bit of work to get that, if you can get it at all. But if I can't get it at all, I'm patient. I don't have to have it today. And since I don't have to have it today, I'm just not going to buy it unless it's at a price that's reasonable to me. At $64 an ounce on the spot market, I, for example, would not be paying over 35 times face today for 90%. And I'm a little bit reluctant to pay that much as it is. And again, a lot of you are going to say, well, where can you get that? Just as I say, you're going to have to dig, you're going to have to look, you're going to have to even go to auction places like eBay, which has some drawbacks on it, but it's also got some advantages. You can find it, you're just going to have to work at it to find it. But until these margins start to switch, again, I would stay away from these big dealers who are taking way too much of a spread right now. A 20% spread is, to me, outrageous, and it tells me they really don't want to buy it from you. They're more than willing to sell it, but they really don't want to buy it. And instead of just saying we're not buying, they're putting the premium down for what you can get so low that it's not worth your time in selling it. And so these are some of the considerations I think that we should all be taking into account. I love the 90% market, but I'm only going to invest in it when it makes sense to do so. And right now, for the most part, it does not make sense to do so. If I can find a good bargain, I'll snap it up. And I've done that again in the past couple of days, and I've certainly done it quite a bit in the last month. But if you can't find a good bargain, just keep your powder dry. Wait, you can spend your money when it's a better deal for you. That's the video for today. I hope it gives you something to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments. I always appreciate your comments. I try to get back to every single comment. Most of the comments are just excellent, even the ones, and sometimes especially the ones who don't agree with me, I learn the most from. And I think you'll learn a lot just by going through this comment section, because there's some pretty sharp investors that will comment on this. And I think they've got some things that will help all of us if we'll just look to see what they're thinking right now as well. But again, thank you for watching today. I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.